Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
So today we're getting into a pretty specific source. It's excerpts from a YouTube video.
Right, featuring two people, Cindy and Raven. And they're talking very openly about, well, how they became vegan.
Yeah, and they frame it interestingly, too. Part of something they called a vegan bomb, encouraging others to share their own stories.
Exactly. So our focus is really on their story, their contribution, based on what they shared in that video.
Okay. And our mission here for this deep dive is really to unpack the specifics of their journey. We want to follow that trail they laid out, where they started, what made them think, how their understanding changed, using just what they told us.
And it's interesting because, like you said, where they started wasn't maybe where you'd expect for a journey to veganism. It was health, personal health problems.
Okay, let's dig into that.
Yeah.
So they pinpoint the start to 2010.
Yeah, just to...
And a really key thing they stress right off the bat is they started this voyage together.
Yes, that seemed important, doing it as a team. And they're very clear. The initial push, purely health reasons.
Right.
Cindy even sort of reflects later, almost regretting starting there, saying they couldn't see the actuality of the animal situation at first. But yeah, health was the way in.
And not just minor things. Cindy talks about having very chronic, severe insomnia, really affecting her life, she says.
And Raven, he lists off chronic earache, chronic knee ache, and also a chronic prostate problem.
Wow.
And here's something quite specific, he claims. For him, those chronic aches and the prostate issue, he says, all of them disappeared within about 6 months after going completely vegan.
6 months?
Oh.
Well, based on their account, that's a pretty dramatic result pretty quickly. A powerful motivator, you'd think.
Absolutely. If you're looking for health solutions, see something like that.
Yeah. So, okay, they've got these health concerns. What was the actual first step they took together back in 2010?
Their entry point, they say, was juicing. Just juicing.
Juicing.
Yeah. They mentioned someone else, John, was briefly involved at the very beginning with the juicing idea, too.
And it wasn't just random juicing, was it? They found a particular mix.
Exactly. They talk about finding a specific combination of vegetables and fruits. And the thing that really struck them, they highlight, was the immediate impact.
Immediate how?
Well, they said it was amazingly working very well at the beginning. It gave them a lot of energy. Raven specifically compares it to a couple of cups of coffee.
So like a noticeable energy boost right away from just juice.
That's what they reported, yeah.
Okay, so they start juicing for health, feel this energy, see some results. Where did that initial success lead them? What was the next thought?
Well, that success kind of made them think deeper. Their logic, as they explain it, was basically, if juice can do this, maybe we should be eating a lot more of these actual fruits and vegetables in our diet.
Ah, makes sense. Less processing, more whole foods.
Right. And that seems to be the moment they started, fundamentally questioning their whole approach to food.
Like a bigger picture view started forming.
Exactly. They describe it as starting to really questioning our nutrition and really paying attention to what we put into our bodies.
Okay.
And that early positive experience with plants, even just in juice, led them to an initial conclusion. A plant-based diet was really the key to help.
So health problems, juicing, realizing plants are powerful.
Yeah.
Questioning their whole diet.
Got it. What was the next phase then? Where did the questions lead?
From there, it sounds like they really dove headfirst into research. Lots of reading.
Okay.
And this research phase is where their focus really sharpened. They started questioning specifically the validity and the nutritional value of meat and dairy.
That's a big turn, especially since they mentioned they used to eat a lot of meat and dairies. That was their norm before.
Oh, completely. They were coming from a very, let's say, standard Western diet background.
Right.
And the research they did, or at least how they present their findings, led them to a really, really strong conclusion, almost black and white.
What? They state that comparing the nutritional value of, quote, meat and dairy and eggs on one side and fruits and vegetable on the other side is incomparable.
Incomparable. Wow. Not just different, but fundamentally separate categories in their minds.
That's the sense you get. And they didn't stop there. They also found, and they seemed genuinely surprised by this, that the whole idea that meat and dairy is a necessity to be healthy is, in their words, a huge myth.
A myth.
Yeah, and more than that, they found it was quite the opposite.
Quite the opposite. Okay, this is getting pretty definitive.
It really is. And this whole research phase, it seems to build up to them making this incredibly powerful statement in the video. And they know it's controversial.
What'd they say?
Based purely on the nutritional research as they recount it, they concluded that meat, dairy, eggs, fish, chicken, all of it is, quote, nothing but poison to human body.
Poison. That's
It's
intense.
intense. And they immediately followed up by saying, I know a lot of people will question that, but it's the truth. It's just poison. They're aware it's a challenging thing to hear.
Okay, so they've gone from personal health to deep nutritional research, leading to this really stark conclusion about animal products from a health angle.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the end of the story, was it? There was another layer.
No, definitely not the end. It took another big turn, something beyond just the physical body. They make it clear they weren't raised a vegan or anything like that. Cindy mentions, Persian food often has meat. She never thought twice about it before.
Right.
The major shift, the one that seems to really cement everything for them, came when they started understanding the ethical side of it.
Okay. And what specifically triggered that for them? What did they learn?
They talk about learning about and understanding the horrific, really immoral conditions under which these animals live and are treated, and their horrible ending.
That sounds like it would be hard to ignore once you learn about it.
Apparently so, because their reaction, as they describe it, was immediate.
What did they do?
They state, we just both decided we cannot do that anymore. We can't eat meat and dairy anymore. Full stop.
Wow. Just like that.
Just like that. And they connect it back to the health finding, too, adding, and we understood we don't need it. So the ethical realization landed on top of that nutritional conclusion they'd already reached.
And Raven, didn't he have a slightly different way of putting the ethical point? Maybe simpler?
He did, yeah. He puts it very bluntly. I really don't care about the conditions. I got to the simple conclusion is the life is not yours to take.
That's very direct. Cuts through the details straight to a core principle.
Right. It's less about the suffering specifics for him, in that quote at least, and more about the fundamental right to life, though they clearly learned about the conditions too.
And there was that anecdote about honey, wasn't there? How that fit into this principle.
Yes. They mention learning how honey is made, and a friend, Michael, apparently told them something that stuck.
How was that?
Essentially, it doesn't matter you can sing and dance for them, but basically it's not yours to take. Even if the conditions seem okay, the product itself isn't freely given, it's taken.
I see. So that reinforced this idea of not yours to take.
Exactly. And that crystallized into their own guiding principle, which they state as they didn't want to eat anything anymore that a creature had to suffer in any shape or form to any degree for us to meet.
That's quite comprehensive.
And they boil it down even further. No creature should die because we think their flesh tastes better. That really seems to capture the ethical core they arrived at.
So if we trace the path, health concerns, juicing, nutritional research, strong health conclusions, then this profound ethical awakening about animal suffering and the right to life. They must have been pretty firmly committed by then.
Oh, yeah. They say that by the end of 2012, remember they started in 2010, they were really solidly committed to being vegan.
2 years from initial health quest to solid vegan commitment, that's quite a transformation.
It really is. And they mentioned one more thing that helped lock it in for them.
Beyond just health and ethics.
It did. They note that as they continued learning, they also began to understand there's an environmental impact to this, too.
So it became like a three-legged stool.
Yeah.
Health, ethics, and environment.
Exactly. A much broader understanding of the implications.
Looking back at that whole process, all the learning and discovery, they use some pretty strong words to describe how they felt during that period.
They do. They say they were really been awakened and were really astounded and horrified by everything we've learned.
Astounded, horrified, awakened. That's quite a mix of emotions.
Yeah, horrified by the animal suffering and the poison idea they landed on, astounded by the nutritional myths and the environmental side, and awakened to a whole new way of seeing things.
And Cindy specifically mentions a regret, looking back now.
Yeah, she says, her regret is, why couldn't I see this much, much earlier? Which kind of highlights how hidden or maybe just unconsidered this all felt to them before 2010.
But despite that feeling, how do they describe being vegan now? How do they feel today?
Oh, incredibly positive. They say they're very happy to be vegan. They feel so relieved and at peace.
A sense of peace.
Yes, and feeling so blessed to have been awakened and to understand and have that compassion. And here's a really interesting part. They say quite clearly, we never enjoyed eating as much as we do now.
That's fascinating because often you hear the opposite, right? That veganism is restrictive.
Exactly. But for them, it sounds like it opened up a new appreciation, a new enjoyment of food, maybe connected to that sense of peace and alignment with their values.
So what's their core message then? To someone listening to their story, maybe someone curious or on the fence?
It's really simple and direct, drawn right from their own experience. Try it.
Just try it.
Yeah, give it a shot. They suggest starting small, with a week, with a month, and they seem very confident when they say, you will see, like the experience itself will be revealing.
And Raven connects their personal journey to something much bigger, doesn't he? Sort of global vision.
He does. It's quite profound, actually. He shares his personal belief that we will never, ever see the whole world in peace unless we start to see that peace from our plate.
Peace from our plate.
For the compassion of the animals to end the suffering and the violence and to make the world a better place. He draws this direct line from individual food choices to, world peace.
That's a powerful thought to leave people with.
Mm-hmm. And then, fittingly, they end their video by coming back to that vegan bomb idea.
Right, encouraging others to share their stories.
Yeah, keeping the conversation going, inviting others into that same kind of exploration they went through.
Okay, so let's recap this deep dive into Cindy and Raven's story as they shared it.
Mm-hmm.
It started very personally. Health problems back in 2010. That led them to try juicing.
Which worked surprisingly well for them initially, sparking deeper research into nutrition.
And that research led them to challenge everything they thought about meat and dairy, forming some really strong conclusions about health, even calling them poison.
Then came the ethical layer, learning about animal conditions, the suffering, leading to an immediate decision. Can't do this anymore.
And crystallizing around that simple, powerful idea Raven mentioned. Life is not yours to take.
Mm-hmm. Plus, eventually, an understanding of the environmental impact, too. Health, ethics, environment.
And they describe this whole journey, despite the initial shock and horror of what they learned, as ultimately leading them somewhere really positive.
Yeah, to feeling relieved, at peace, blessed, and even enjoying food more than ever.
So their final message to you, the listener, drawn straight from their experience. It's an invitation, really.
Just to consider it. Give it a chance. Maybe just a week, maybe a month. Because in their words, you will see.
And maybe, just maybe, spend a moment thinking about Raven's closing idea.
That connection between world peace and what's on our plate.
Yeah. What is linking something so personal, like our daily food choices, to something so vast, like global peace?
Mm-hmm.
What does that connection mean for how we see things?
And maybe what unexpected journeys could you find yourself on, starting from one place and ending up somewhere entirely different with a whole new perspective? Food for thought.